It's a worry to me.
It was the call my bluff that swung it, I think, really.
And you're all still speaking?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, madly. I got a nice little thing in a frame. Well, little, it's about that big, hung on the loo wall. And it's all the people who were on the show, behind the scenes, all wrote little things on it. And your comments, fab, it's got, it's got, ecky thump, we made it, honey.
Ecky thump, we made it, honey. That's right. You know what is amazing is everybody expects Kenny Everett, and there was definitely a nervousness around the studio when you were coming in today, to come in and do something ludicrous. And you're really quite a nice, sensible fellow, really, aren't you?
Well, I always go opposite to what people expect, not purposely, it's just subconscious, I guess, because I did a show a couple of days ago called Pebble Mill.
Daytime Live?
Daytime Live, yeah. And Pam Armstrong came on at the beginning of the interview with a riot shield. A real riot shield. Said, well, we've heard that Kenny's a bit of an outrage, so we've got a riot shield. And of course it threw me totally into respectability. I knew, why didn't you put that away, Pam? I'm 43.
But I'm not. I didn't come in with a riot shield, and you've been really boring and sensible.
Thank you.
No, say what you think.
No, don't stand on the fence.
Let's be honest about this.
But does he actually do this sort of thing when you know, do the loony stuff, when everything's getting a bit sort of tense around the studio?
We don't get tense at all.
No.
Do we? I don't think we've ever been tense, have we?
Well,
in the studio? Or even...
Oh, terribly, yes. I just didn't let it show. No, it's a tense-making thing. I mean, look at that thing with the great horns on it, the TV cameras, the red lights saying you're on in front of 7 million people. You can't just sit here and snore. You've got to be wacky. Yeah.
In fact, you're probably the first person who ever dared to go up to a TV camera and touch it, didn't you?
Yes. Did I really?
Yeah. You put... No, settle down. Settle down. Listen, we have had hundreds of thousands of people phoning in with who they think sang on that record with you 20 years ago, who is a top TV executive. So let's go back over to Mike to find out if anybody's got the answer right.
Well, we haven't got to winners yet. The lines are still open on 061-814-0424. The closest suggestion so far comes from Louise Russell from Scotland, who suggests Michael Grade. Other suggestions, John Carver from Barnsley says Mike Vickers. Margaret from Oldham thought it was Richard Chamberlain. Really? Joy Hassel from Crewe thought it was Johnny Hamp. That's another closest one. And Michael O'Flaherty gave us a call, and he thought it was Jermaine Greer. Quite. And Tracy Lee gave us an interesting call, by the way, from Torquay. She says, does Kenny wear boxer shorts? Would you like to tell us, Kenny?
Well, I will be wearing boxer shorts on television in a couple of weeks. Somebody sent me a pair of comic relief boxer shorts with little faces on with red noses.
Oh, right. And
we're doing some sketches for that show, so I might just introduce the world to my lallies, my hairy great legs.
Your lallies. Now then, so those were your suggestions. It all gave us a lot of laughs. It obviously shows what people think senior executives are. Jermaine Greer? She just got
Richard Chamberlain.
Richard Chamberlain, that was a good one. Yes, head of BBC News. Well, the identity of the top TV executive involved in that record was also the person who gave Kenny his very first break into TV with Nice Time. Here's what he had to say about Nice Time when Eamonn talked to him in London yesterday.
The essential idea behind it, I think, was real people and putting real people into various kinds of funny situations. The presenter team was Jonathan Routh, who had been well known. You're probably too young to remember him.
Candid Camera.
Yeah. Jermaine Greer, before she became one of the world's leading philosophers, was better known as a review performer in the Cambridge Footlights, and she was on the programme. Briefly, Sandra Gough, who'd been a star in Coronation Street, was on it. But the main presenter and the person who gave it a special style was Kenny. Kenny had been a very brilliant, but young, and very young, he was in his early 20s, as were we all, DJ on Radio 1. He had worked alone, as far as I recall, with his tape recorder, and was a sound genius before his time, but not just a sound genius, a comic genius too, but it was a very private genius, which had obviously, I think he was probably a shy young man who did most of it by himself and created a world of his own, which he finally put before the radio listeners. And it was a wonderful, funny, inventive, surreal, and highly intelligent form of humour, but all, I think, of his own creation.
So basically, what I've gathered, you seem to, for the rest of your life now, have carried around the awesome responsibility of being the man who introduced Kenny Everett onto the television screen.
And that's true. And I have to hope that Kenny's career is a great success, or continues to be the great success that it has been so far, because Kenny owes me £1 million.
Really?
Yes, in preparing for this interview, I looked back through my files, and I had almost, but not quite, forgotten that on July the 26th, or thereabouts, 1969, nearly 20 years ago, Kenny, who presumably owed me £1 million, I can't quite recall, wrote me a cheque for £1 million, which he post-dated to 1999. Now, £1 million is not worth now what it was in 1969, but nonetheless it's worth having, and I count the days, only 11 more years to go before I collect my money.
You thought for a minute you were in luck there. He's saying all these nice things about you.
There's no point in going on, is there? I mean, there's no point in working anymore.
Do you remember what that was for?
He's going to get all the money.
Do you remember what that was for?
I think I owed him for the lunch. He was quite sweet about me, wasn't he, the Director General?
He was very nice.
If he likes me that much, I want a raise.
That would practically cover the bacon rolls for Bergerac, wouldn't it?
This is not exactly the image of John Burt that we have, is it? That, you know, he obviously loves Kenny's style of zany humour.
I've always admired him ever since Naked Civil Servant and Elephant Man. I've seen everything he's done, and that just bore out what I thought.
You were very polite about him, weren't you?
Well, he's the boss.
Yes, absolutely. And you owe him £1 million.
And he hasn't changed a bit since nice time. He still looks young and debonair and dapper.
Debonair and dapper.
Crawler.
Finally, obviously you're in there with the man at the top. Another series, Kenny?
Of course. Many, 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 many series. You've still got time to leave the country, folks.
And you'll be, both of you, on board, presumably?
Hopefully.
Yes.
Right. And it's off to Top of the Pops for you?
Tomorrow, yes.
And it's off for fish and chips now.
Fish and chips?
Oh, yes.
Fish and chips for lunch, right. Thank you all very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
Do you notice not a single critical call? This is amazing. Aren't we nice to you?
Our line jamming work.
Now let me hand you back to Mike in Manchester.
Well, we had some other suggestions. Lou Grade was one from Karen Harris. David Mitchell suggested Marmaduke Hussey. Graham Cousin suggested Billy Cotton. I'm afraid none of those were right, as you know, so I'll have to keep that sweatshirt myself. We did have one critical call, by the way, from Margaret Stevens in Liverpool, who says Kenny Everett is an insult to people with intelligence. It's puerile humour. And that's about it. The lines, of course, remain open for a couple of hours or so. 061 814 0424. Give us a call. Eamonn.
Right, and that's just about it from today's edition of Open Air. Now, let me tell you what is happening on tomorrow's programme, because tomorrow we'll be talking to the man who created and shaped Channel 4 and who's given it its very distinct image.